So today I want to talk about a phenomenon that I'm sure we've all noticed that is causing a lot of chaos and confusion, and that has a relatively simple antidote. And by simple, I don't necessarily mean easy, but I just wanted to start this conversation because this is the kind of thing that just simply being aware of and looking at a few things, making a few distinctions can really go a long way in helping us avoid some of the chaos and confusion. So, have you had the experience of following a particular method, philosophy, or idea that is really beneficial to you? And it might even be something that you recommend to others. And then you start to notice a few things. So number one, you might notice that some people are relating to and interpreting and applying this idea in a way that appears to not be beneficial for them or harmful to others. You might also notice that while this idea seems like a good idea in your own experience and when you're looking at things on a smaller scale, but when you start to look at the effect that this idea is having, if it's something that is trending on the masses, you might start to question some things. So an example of this one for me is the idea of how important it is to have boundaries around how much information we take in and, what we focus on in terms of the news, because there's just so much going on. And of course, I believe this is important. I'm not questioning that per se, but this is an example of one of those things when you start to look more what's going on mass scale and start to have experiences with others, when you may start to realize that there are some important distinctions to be made with some of this blanket advice that we all get, and we might need to make some adjustments or reconsider how we're relating to some of this advice or some of these ideas. Another thing that I'm sure we've all noticed is how when we start to realize the downsides of a particular idea, and everything has downsides, we tend to overgeneralize and make it about the idea itself. And then we can basically throw it out altogether. We can discredit those that share that idea, and we can make ourselves wrong for ever having followed whatever that was, when really it's about understanding our relationship to those ideas, understanding the nuances of things, understanding how we apply ideas within certain contexts. There's a bunch of things that we can look at that can help us to connect more to the big picture and better understand how to use ideas. An example of this one that I encountered recently is I came across an article that said something like, the title was something like, "Why You Might Want to Be in a Codependent Relationship." And I didn't get a chance to read the article, but I thought that was funny because this is just one example of what I know we all notice when we go down the rabbit hole of exploring certain things which are very important to explore. If we look at the whole idea of codependency, but then sometimes we can notice the downsides of going too far in a certain direction, or maybe misapplying some things. There's a lot to look at within all of that. And this is what I mean by the chaos and confusion, because it can just be overwhelming. I know for myself, this has showed up in my own algorithm where it's just madness. It's just like one thing against the other. And a lot of really good intentioned and very helpful perspectives. So I'm not suggesting that we don't question things. And sometimes we do need to look at certain ideas because some ideas can be more problematic than others. But I think the more important conversation for us to be having is how we relate to all this information that we're taking in and all this sort of blanket advice that we're getting, and how we can sort of up level the conversation by looking at things in a more nuanced way. So I know none of what I'm sharing here is anything new or anything that you don't know. But the reason why I'm bringing up this conversation is because as much as we're all aware of it, it's very clear that this is playing out on a mass scale, that we're ping-ponging ideas against each other, that we're doing this whole pendulum swing. And I think the reason why it's so difficult, especially nowadays, is because there is just so much to contain, and to maintain that connection to the big picture and to make those distinctions and to kind of be able to orient ourselves within things so that we know when we're out of balance, or we know when and how to apply certain things. It can be just so easy to get caught in the framework of a certain idea and then to start to sort of see everything through that lens, which is another thing in itself. I could probably do a whole video on that too. So there's a lot to this, and I think there's a need for something that can really help us to gain that clarity, and also that can help us to have more nuanced conversations. And so my name is Sheila, and the overall purpose of this channel is for us to zoom out and to explore some of the broader phenomenon that we're all experiencing, but that we may not always be able to pinpoint, or we may not have language for. And by looking sort of outside of things, we may be able to get the perspective that we need to get clear on how to bring things together and how to use all of the things that we have access to, because I think it's a wonderful thing that we have expanded so much in all of the things that we're exploring and all the different ways of looking at things. And there's a lot of value to all of these things. It's just becoming very, very difficult to put it all together and to know how to apply it within our own experience, and also how to negotiate our shared reality when everyone is exploring in different places. So that gives you just a taste of what we're here to talk about. And I'd love for this to be a two-way conversation. And so any suggestions that you have on what we can talk about in future videos would be very welcomed. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. I would appreciate any support you can give, because this is a brand new channel, so I can use all the help I can get. And I really hope to see you in the next video. Take care.